I was out and about, again. And I've already mentioned before that whenever I go into the park, I notice now that everybody's on their phone. There's nothing unusual about that. That's been going on for 10 years. But the phone had now taken priority. The portal was more important to them than the dog on the string. That little pet that they love so much, which they're oblivious to, is now invisible as they walk along, dragging this thing, this poor bloody animal, whilst their other hand, of course, and their little thumb is working hard on that phone. And I've talked about the women who've learned to push the buggies with one hand because they need the other hand for the phone. The little kid in the pram, the buggy, they're oblivious to that. That's why they walk into bins, and that's why they walk into bicycles that are going by. Who cares, though? Who cares? But I haven't really talked about all these people who are shouting into their phones. Everybody now is talking into their phones as they transverse the park here, as they walk from the metro to the shop, as they walk from their home to the convenience store, they're on the phone. Some of them are on the phone like this. Some of them are on the phone with the earpiece and just talking to themselves and into the air, normally shouting. Sometimes you can hear them at 100 meters away. But the question is, who are they all talking to? Who are they talking to? I mean, is it really so urgent that they have to be having a major communication with someone when they're just going 2 minutes across the street? Or maybe it is. I don't know. But I got a theory. Now, I guess a lot of you are thinking, what the hell are you going on about with these stupid mobile phones? Who cares? And maybe you're somebody who was born into this world where there was nothing but the phone and you don't know any time before. Well, you're not going to know any time afterwards either. Because it is an interesting issue. If you think it's the death of the human soul, or if you think it's the beginning of the end of the human spirit, one of those, then it's worth talking about. It's a sign, it's a symbol. It's an omen for the beginning of a period of great acceleration. And, as I said, the entropy of the human mind, the atrophy of the brain, and the death of the human soul. Now, wise words, not really. Just go out and have a look, watch. I'm sure you've seen it yourself. You may not have seen it because you may have been looking at your phone. So I'm looking at this as a symbol. I'm looking at this as a sign that we are accelerating into a new period. But let's get back to the question. Who is everybody talking to? Because I got my theory. Now, this isn't new, and you must be tired of this, I guess, in a way. Let's go back 20 years. 20 years ago, do you remember when you were on that bus and you were transversing the streets and you were sitting quietly? You're probably smoking. You could smoke on buses in those days. And you're probably minding your own business. And if you'd wanted to distract yourself then, you would have been reading a newspaper because, in fact, in many cities then, the newspapers were actually given away free, many of them. Or you could get an evening paper for next to nothing. And then suddenly somebody in the bus would start shouting maybe at the front, and they'd have one of those great big phones. And you'd think, bloody hell, what's all this about? What a nuisance. Have you seen these people who they're on the bus and suddenly they're shouting into some object? And they're normally saying, I'm on a bus, you know that. That was 20 years ago. And then 10 years ago, everybody on the metro and the subway was staring at their phone. And that was okay, because that had in a way, replace the newspaper. So, instead of having that big newspaper open, or read a book, that's what people used to do, or they'd stare out the window. Those were your three options. And now all of those had been replaced by kind of having a look through your phone. I suppose that was fine, wasn't it, in a way? No big deal about it. But 10 years ago, there was the phone. Then you might get off the bus and you might put the phone in your pocket, and you might leave it there, perhaps until your commute on the way back, something like that. And now, of course, that's impossible. We all know what that feels like. Have you ever done that? Have you ever tried to put your phone away just for a couple of minutes while you pop out the house to go to the convenience store across the street? And you're really, you know that this isn't good to be on it 24/7, but you can feel it in your pocket, and sometimes you just feel, don't you? And to see if it's there, feel that shape of it. Yeah, it feels, it's there, it's solid. Solid, but you can't resist. Maybe, you've got to get it out. You've got to get it out. Okay, so everybody now is on their phone all of the time. Doesn't matter what they're doing. Where I live, anyway. Maybe it's not the same way you are, but I'm sure in many of the cases, it is. What are they all doing? What are they all talking about? Well, I've got a clue. Everyone's out there talking on their phone, but you never hear the phone ring. You never hear the phone ring. The only time people are out on the streets, they're not wandering around this city aimlessly. They're going from A to B. They're going from home to the metro, home to the bus, or they're going to the local shop, or they're going downtown to get a pair of shoes or whatever. They're going on these fairly short pedestrian journeys. Okay, let's not talk about what people are doing on buses now. Just because I'm just observing what I see around me, and there's a park here which connects buses and metros and ferries and shops. And everybody's talking on their phone. They're all talking. They're pushing the pram. They're walking the dog. They're talking on the phone. Often loud. Real loud. It's like an illness to me, but there you go. So who are they all talking to? You never hear the phone ring. When was the last time that somebody was walking down the street and you hear a phone ring, You don't hear that anymore, do you? You never hear that now. You don't hear the phone ringing. And then they pull the phone out of their pocket and they go, hello? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be a bit like that kind of thing. You never hear the phone ring. Why do you never hear the phone ring? I'll tell you why. Because they've made the call. That's why. They have not answered a call. Nothing urgent has come in. Nobody wants to speak to them. And this is why the phone hasn't rung. Because no one's ringing them. No one's calling them. Nobody wants to speak to them. All that's happening is that before they leave their apartment, on their 5-minute journey to wherever they're going, they have come up with a reason to disturb somebody. It could be a brother, it could be a sister, it could be a mother, it could be a girlfriend, it could be a boyfriend, it could be a mate, it could be all types of people. Anyone who's in that contact list. They are looking for someone to talk to keep them occupied over that 2 or 3 minute walk. And this is why you will never hear the phone ring. It's pre-planned. All they're doing is intruding on somebody else to help them get across the park, to help them get down the street from A to B. They're talking in a vacuum. They're talking to nobody. They're just intruding. Nobody actually wants to speak to them. Nobody actually has initiated this communication except them. This isn't really speculation. This is pure logic on observing what actually happens. And there's a reason for this. You don't want to listen to me. I mean, who knows whether I've got some kind of handle on what's going on. But I have spoken a lot before about the fact that because there's no kind of salvation in this life, and because it's just one long coping strategy, and because we're all aware of the fragility of our own existence, and let's be honest, the pure terror of it in many ways, if we think about it, which we don't, then it's very important that we never ever find ourselves, as Blaise Pascal, the philosopher, said, sitting quietly with ourselves. If we do, we may be exposed to a void which we can't handle, and we manage to go through our entire existence without ever spending a moment sitting quietly in that Pascal's room or wherever we are, because we are terrified of what might become of us. And so we need to have that diversion even as we walk down the street. And that's why we pre-plan who we're going to talk to. Now, of course, it's not a lot of pre-planning. I mean, it's just you find an excuse very easily. Oh, I must ring Chloe about this, or I'll ring Yasmin about that. I'll ring Paul about this. Better give Mother a ring, whatever. Why did Pascal say we can't do that? Well, because we have to keep busy. Because we are afraid that we will discover the universal wretchedness of man if we stop for a minute. We must busy ourselves, We've got to keep busy. I told you the story before about the guy I know who retired and found himself, who desperately wanted to retire, and then he found himself confronted by the void. And within weeks, even though he'd planned this for years and years and decades, he couldn't wait to retire. Within weeks, that void was creeping in, that silence. A hint of the wretchedness of man was coming towards him. And so he kind of invented the most bizarre little projects. I've told you, like exporting trash bags one by one to customers through an eBay and eBay and a Shopify, which it kind of faded into nothing because it was nothing. Anyway, enough of that. I keep talking about him. Kierkegaard as well. What did he say was the reason that we had to constantly talk and chatter and scroll and escape from ourselves? Now, of course, he didn't use the word scroll. Not in that context, because there was no scrolling then. Kierkegaard being long dead before the mobile phone came, lucky man. But he said that nobody wants to confront their own being because nobody likes anxiety. Nobody wants to engage with their own actual real condition. This is why the world is full of absolute nonsense and noise. All there is coping strategies. And there is apophenia as well. Apophenia being the need to try and understand things by making patterns out of nothing. But that's another thing. Yeah. There were other philosophers as well, like Heidegger, who also talked about the way that we have to flee from our own being at every opportunity. That we need distraction. And of course, there's a political structural concept as well which comes into play, which is the idea that you don't think all of this is by accident, of course. The fact that there is now a mass distraction, a cultural mass distraction. I mean, on the one hand, we've got extremely powerful algorithmic based heroin technology, which has we've become completely absorbed by, not 50, 60%, 100%. Nothing happens if there's not a photograph taken of it now. Nobody is happy unless they've recorded it on their phone, and we'll never see that again. But they've lost the moment fumbling around trying to get people in the picture. But that's another question, isn't it? Mass distraction. What does mass distraction prevent? Well, it stops people thinking to some extent, doesn't it? It certainly stops critical thought. And of course, on the other part is that sort of cult. We've got that technology, and then we've got the sort of cultural infantilizing of people. You know, through popular programs and reality TV shows like Love is Blind, which operate at the same level. Yeah, there you go. So what are people avoiding then? What's really going on? What is this void? Well, a lot of it's tied up with mortality. You can hear your heart beating. If you can feel your breath moving in and out. If you can see the wind in the trees. You can sense the death in the air. Seasons changing. The heartbeat like a ticking clock. You've only got so much time. But it's not just mortality, but being on the phone for that 2-minute walk across to the convenience store. It's helping you avoid. It's also your own freedom. Think about it. There you are, completely free in a way. Free to choose whatever you want. And you lock yourself in to your own prison. Solitary confinement. We're afraid of freedom. Freedom terrifies us. We desire it, but we can't handle it should it ever come. We wouldn't know how to choose how to live if it came. We're best that we're told. Emptiness, the vacuum, that's something else we're avoiding. We can't hold on to any real meaning, can we? There's no real meaning to anything. We might discover that. It's better to be in the world of many meanings. Millions of mini meanings. Kind of like little speckles in the air. Little fragments of light. Millions of mini meanings which just kind of, we swim through. It's great, isn't it? Catch as many as we can. You push them out, what is there? Well, there's nothing, is there? There's no inherent meaning. And the phone goes dead. There's no one on the end of the phone. Nobody answers the phone. If you don't have a phone, if your contacts are empty, then you're alone. And it's not just being alone. It's the sense that you were always alone. And that you are really alone. Friends will just scatter if anything problematic happens to you. Maybe it's never happened to you. You might have one that hangs around. But your friends are going to be no support when you've got cancer. It's a personal battle. It's something that you have to bear on your own. It is your own cross to bear. We can't turn the clock back on any of this technology. Of course we can't. We're accelerating. We're going to accelerate exponentially over the next few decades until we hit the wall. We will hit the wall.